Jesus is the answer for the world today. Above him there's no other, 'cause Jesus is the way.
Today we're going to be talking about the Counseling Center structure, decisions, but mostly decisions. What are the decisions you're going to have to make a counseling plan, which is going to include a business plan? Now, why do we need to really look into this and make these kind of decisions and talk about these things today? Well, first, 44% of all small businesses fail in the first 3 years. And see, planning makes sure you have a plan and makes you work through all of these things and really figure out if this is really feasible, if this is really going to work. Have you thought it through, and what decisions are you going to make? Now, in a way, we're trying to take on the impossible. Because can you really plan everything about your future, and is it all going to come out that way? Not necessarily. In fact, the Bible even suggests that God only gives hints, or God takes you as a guide one step at a time. But if you have no plan, how are you ever going to at least move in the right direction where God can give you mid-course corrections and make things work out in your life? Job 37:17 says this, that he may withdraw man from his purpose and hide pride far from man. And then Ecclesiastes 3:17 says, I said in my heart, God shall judge the righteous and the wicked, for there's a time there for every purpose and for every work. So there's a lot more going on here, but we have our part to do. And today we're going to talk about our part, and hopefully as we do this, you're going to really think about, what is the Holy Spirit saying to me? How am I supposed to do this? What am I called to do? And those are the things we sort of have to work out. Now, I want to start with a very interesting topic. It's called, why do therapists go broke? Because you can be a wonderful, fantastic therapist helping people, and if you don't set stuff up, you're not going to last. You're going to end up going broke. You're not going to be able to support your ministry, and so you're going to have to always maintain a job on the side or something, and this might be a small ministry, but if you're going to help a lot of people, then you're going to have to set it up in a way that's going to work. What's the first reason, do you think? How many of us have a natural drive toward business? I asked you that last time, and I didn't get a lot of hands. I got one hand out of the entire room, didn't I? And so us counselors, if we really had a choice, we would just say, let me do the counseling, forget all this business stuff, forget all this junk and setting things up and making all these decisions. I just want to help people. A therapist, we're sort of more oriented toward nurturing, toward helping other people. We really don't want to charge them any money. We don't want to be part of their problem. We don't want to collect debts. We don't want to do any of that kind of stuff, do we? What do you think is one of the hardest things that we find with new counselors starting their own practice? Getting them to transition from free counseling to charging for their counseling. That's one of the hardest things. Now, an entrepreneur is a natural extrovert, relentlessly persistent, without fear, takes action effortlessly, welcomes challenges, and seeks opportunities. So that's sort of a different person than maybe we are, but we're going to still have to learn some of this, and we're going to have to learn how to face some of these issues if we're really going to be successful setting up our own counseling practice. Counselors tend to lack the qualities to be able to consistently bring in clients, achieve financial goals, and set good practice goals. Therapists do not know enough about business. That's why we're giving you this course. Knowledge is power. If you understand what you're supposed to do and you have a good plan, things are going to go smooth for you. If you don't, you're going to be stressed out, maybe not by your counseling, but by the balance sheet. You have to know how to be a craftsman in your practice. Stay focused, optimistic, and resolute. You must have the mindset of business growth and development. If you don't, what's going to happen? you'll get to a certain place and you're going to plateau. You need to integrate into current businesses, diversify, reorient. You have to set up a structure, decide out whether you're going to have a corporation, partnership, or whatever. What are your 10 business goals? We'll talk about that later, of putting that together, getting some goals and getting some direction here. You're going to have to reconcile profit and service because they sometimes are the opposite of each other. Here's just some general rules just from my experience. You can't do more than about 10% of pro bono counseling. That means you charge nothing for it and survive. You must be competitive in salaries you pay people and in your fees. You must have at least 50% full paying clients, because you're always going to have reductions in different situations. Even with insurance companies, you're going to have to be taking some reduction. But you need to have about 50% of people that are at least paying the full amount that you're charging. You must make a living or you will not survive or grow. If you're not taking enough in, what's going to happen? You have to go out and get another job. You have to do something else. And you won't be able to really have a full functioning counseling center. You must be self-sufficient or have a strong donation basis. What's the problem if a lot of your counseling center is based on donations? What if the donations don't come in? Then what's going to happen? You have to take all these things into account. Safe business practices. Don't overpromise results. Don't give people, oh, we can handle that, it'll only take 2 weeks. Don't take on multiple roles. As soon as you can, try to have an office manager or somebody else to do that role so you're not doing everything. Document your counseling and your coaching sessions. We'll talk about that later, but you need to have good records. Maintain ethical standards. Have a good contract. Tie all this stuff down and have a good contract with your church, whatever you're working with, so everything's are very clear so you don't run into problems. And above all, maintain confidentiality. What if you go around the church talking about people you're talking to? What's going to happen? You're not going to last very long. People aren't going to want to come to you. Creating a business plan. We're going to talk at length today about creating a business plan here. It sets goals for your practice. It makes you make decisions about the direction of your practice. It determines whether an idea is feasible. It determines whether an idea will be profitable. It evaluates your results as compared to your goals that you have set. And it provides the information necessary to get a loan if you're going in that direction. We don't recommend that, by the way. And we'll talk more about that. But if you don't have the data all written out in a business plan, there's no bank that's going to give you any money, or no one's going to give you any money to get your center started. So what are some of the things you need to determine? How much money you need to get started? What will your expenses be? How to maximize your money when setting up your office? When to expect to break even? When do you expect to make a profit? How much profit can you expect to make? So what we're going to do now, and this is the core of what we're doing today, is we're going to take each one of those questions and talk about them. What are the critical decisions you need to make before you even start writing your business plan? The first one is this primarily going to be a business atmosphere or a ministry atmosphere? The business model is going to be more profitable and probably more secure for you. If you're not under church leadership, you can pretty much do anything you want to. But how about if you are under church ministry and they're providing for you? What happens when the church gets low on money? There are actually two situations here in this town. One church was actually providing about 50% of the counseling fees. What do you think happened when the church now was short of money? The counseling center was gone. Another church being under church leadership, They actually had a whole drug alcohol program. They got all these things going. And some of the elders of the church decided they didn't want their kids around those kind of people. And so the whole counseling center was shut down. So deciding how you do all this is going to make a really big difference. Business will not work well in a church. Why? Are churches very professional? How do churches tend to operate? See, an example is one day we showed up for class and there were no tables or chairs in the classroom because they were having a garage sale and they needed the tables and the chairs. You don't know what's going to happen because you have to learn how to operate in a very flexible environment and be very flexible of what you do. As an example, if you're sharing the office with the pastor to do your counseling and he has an emergency come up, where are you going to be? Counseling in the sanctuary. The business model could open you up to more secular clients because they're going to see you more as a secular organization. But are you going to get as many Christian clients? See, one of the things that helps a lot, if you're in a large church, they're going to have a lot of people needing counseling, and they're going to refer their people to you if you're part of that church. And the farther you're away from that church, the farther you're seen as a business, the less referrals you might get from that church. But you might get more referrals from other churches and other people because they don't see you totally associated only with that one church. See how there are pros and cons in this whole thing? People in the church expect you to minister for free. It really provides the whole flavor of what you're doing. Remember one time we had a counselor working here. He came to my office and said, we need to get this thing together. We need to go build this big building, and we need to have this business, and we need to do this and this and this and this and this. And when I say, I'm sorry, we believe God has called us to a ministry, and we're not here training people for the outside world. We're training people for the church, and this is a ministry. And because it's a ministry, our flavor here is giving people opportunities to minister. That doesn't mean we always have all the most professional or all the best people or anything, but we're operating in a different wavelength in a different way. And that's a decision you're going to have to make. We chose ministry because we believe it is ministry, it belongs in the church, and we're showing that it can work within the church, it can function that way. We're sort of a prototype for other churches to be able to do this. That's also why when we were offered to go to another building that was still on the campus, but it wasn't in the church itself, we declined. Because we believe if people are coming into the church and they're actually getting their counseling in the church, there's a better chance they're going to be connected with the church and we'll be able to get them into the church. So we see this as an overall ministry where everything is integrated together and we're all helping each other. And that's the reason we made that particular decision. Next decision you need to make is autonomy versus working for somebody else. We recommend very strongly that you get some experience, at least as a practicum, maybe even after that as a lay counselor, in an organization that's actually operating, so you don't have to reinvent the wheel. If you are operating independently, the advantage is you can hear from God, you can make immediate changes, you can do whatever you want to do. If not, if you're in a church, what do you have to do? You're going to have to get into the flow of that church, and whatever you're doing has to fit into the flow of that pastor and what that church is doing. So make sure in any church you get into that you can fit into that flow. You don't have a boss to take your problems to if you're running it yourself, do you? In a church, you can be under a spiritual covering but still have clear boundaries. That's the way we operate. We chose the middle ground of being under spiritual authority of a church, but having a clear contract and giving to the church, not asking anything from the church, which gives us a certain amount of isolation. So if the church goes up and down, we don't cost them anything, so we have a better chance of not being basically terminated or anything like that. But it means that you're going to have to fit in. As an example, we first started here with support groups. on Thursday night. We're having a little bit of problem getting child care for the kids, and the pastor decided we ought to move to Wednesdays for our support groups. Well, we're under his authority, so what do we need to do? Move to Wednesday. It worked out well, but I'm just saying it was his decision. It wasn't ours. So you have a balance here. Next one is religious exclusion versus license center. What am I talking about? There are only two really ways to operate. Either you're going to operate as a state licensed counselor and basically be a secular counselor who's doing Christian counseling. The advantage, of course, is you can take mental health insurance and those kind of things, but you have to now meet all of the secular rules, don't you? And there are a lot of rules that are different than you're going to have in Christian counseling. Your other choice is to not operate under the state and be sort of on your own under what's called a religious exclusion. That means if you're an ordained pastor, if you're a licensed minister, or if it's an official program of church, at least in this state, you can do pretty much whatever you want to do. And so you don't have a lot of the rules, a lot of those kind of problems. You probably can make more money if you become a licensed counselor. We have one large counseling center here in town that is related to a church, but they only use licensed counselors. Of course, your licensed counselor is going to cost you a lot more in the way of education. You have to take all the secular stuff, and you're going to have to meet all the secular requirements to be able to get to that particular place. Secular counseling means more accountability to the different boards that your state has. There's a fine line between secular and religious counseling. Because how do you know that you're a Christian counselor? Is it because you have a Bible on your desk? Because a lot of the stuff that we're going to do is going to be a lot like a secular counselor is going to do, except we have the additional tools. It makes you more vulnerable to a litigation if you're a secular counselor, because you're expected to do certain things to meet certain laws. There was actually a case where a pastoral counselor, one of his clients committed suicide, and they sued him for failure to stop the suicide. But he basically said, I'm not trained in that. And because he wasn't trained in that the lawsuit was dropped. But those are the kind of problems you can run into. There's certain secular expectations that you need to meet if you're going to do the secular direction. Licensure allows you to be on the list with the courts. If you're not licensed in the state, then the courts aren't going to put you on their list in most cases. There's some exceptions, probably in parenting, training, maybe even domestic violence, and that's even changing. Secular requirements restrict what you can do. As an example, a counselor who was a Christian counselor basically told somebody that abortion was sin and wrong, and they got sued. Because you're not supposed to be telling people what their morals are, you're supposed to be letting them sort that out for themselves in secular counseling. What did we choose to do here? We chose to do both. So we have people that are operating under the religious exclusion, and we have people operating with licensure to the state. And of course, we have to be careful and sort all that out and make sure we meet all the requirements of both. A church contract versus your own facility. Because you can operate and have your own facility. There are different ways of doing that. What are the church advantages? Low or no cost getting started. If the pastor will give you a room in the church, you have what you need to get started. And if the pastor will let you use his copier and let him use your computer and give you a chair someplace, you can get started. You can have a percentage agreement, which means you don't really have a fixed overhead. As you grow, you get more money, the church gets compensation, it all works on a percentage. You're clearly labeled as a Christian counselor. If they come to a church and that's where you're counseling, what should they expect? You have a built-in administrative support if they'll provide that for you. Most churches have at least one administrator. They may even answer the phone and schedule your clients for you. So it provides you a lot of support when you're starting small. If you are a pastor in that same church, you can even get a deduction on your taxes for housing. If people are saved, they'll more easily be brought into the church, and the church may even help you get started. I know of some churches that they actually will pay the counselor a certain amount or bring them on salary, maybe half-time or something, and provide money to try to help you get started and get the counseling center going. What are the disadvantages? The pastor may not fully support counseling or really believe in it totally. You might be asked to do additional things in the church. It's very easy if you're an associate pastor or something, get caught up in the preaching and all the rest of the other things in the church and no longer be doing that much counseling. How about just using your home for your counseling? What do you think about that? Most people don't really like that idea. How much does it interfere with your family? And how professional does it seem if you're going to somebody's home? And what do you do when one of your clients shows up at 2 o'clock in the morning and knocks on your door? Now, there are all sorts of negative drawbacks to try and do this in your home. How do you pick a facility if you're going to have a facility outside of the church? We're going to have to think of how much it's going to cost you and see if you can afford this. And where is it going to be? We do have Christian counselors that operate in separate facilities outside of the church. And that can be done, but it's going to have a lot more overhead involved. And that's the reason that most Christians actually will go into the church. And of course, what have we decided to do here? We operate totally through and out of the church. How about a profit versus non-profit organization? What's the advantage of the for-profit organization? You get the money. Advantage of the non-profit organization, you don't have to pay taxes. So you have to just sort some of these things out. If you're a 501(c), then people donating to your counseling center will get a tax write-off. Contractors versus employees. Why would you want to have contractors rather than employees? Well, one, there's not as much paperwork. If you're dealing with contractors, you're hiring a service rather than you're hiring an employee. You don't have to do workman's comp, you don't have to do withholding, you don't have to do evaluations, you don't have to do most of the paperwork. All you need is a contract. And you can terminate a contract at any time you wish according to the provisions of the contract. So that's the advantage of using contractors. How about the advantage of employees? Well, one, you have more control over the employees. You do evaluations, you can have a meeting with them and tell them you're not performing and so on and so forth. With a contractor, you can just terminate the contract. But employees also might cost you more money. Have more administrative support, you're going to have to maybe provide additional benefits for the employee. What we've determined here is that we use both. Is that I, as an associate pastor, and Cheryl, as the administrator, are W-2 employees. Everybody else is a contractor. But we still all operate based on a percentage of what we actually bring in or a percentage of what is done here in the church. Next question. What fees should I charge? Fees range for counseling from about $75 an hour to $175 an hour. How would you like to all start at $175 an hour? Well, pretty much depends on what people will be willing to pay you, right? First question is, what are other people charging in the area? Here in Wichita, Christian counselors that are licensed by the state are charging about $100 a session. But of course, others are going to be on a sliding scale, and we'll even have lay counselors that'll be for free. What can the people afford? What's the perceived value? You can charge according to your experience. If you're brand new, you may have to charge less. Can you prorate the fees that you're taking based on different situations? How about a fee structure? Can be donation, sliding scale, fixed fee, insurance. You can offer payment incentives. You can even have professional courtesy toward the church. We do that if the church is actually paying for the counseling for a particular person, we charge them less. If you're having a sliding scale, what's it going to be? We recommend you use the number of dollars per year that a person brings in dollars per hour. and then you have a bottom to that sliding scale. So as an example, if the client is making $60,000 a year, you would charge them $60 an hour. But if they're making like 10, you might say that's a little bit too low. The minimum I'm going to charge is $35 an hour or $45 an hour. Who's going to pay for the counseling? Usually it's the client. It could be the insurance company. It could be the pastor of the church. It could be their mom. It could be almost anybody. How about pricing rules? Steve Mitten, who actually is a coach, says basically if 20% balk at your fee, it's probably too high. If 20% don't balk at your fee, it's probably too low. Okay, how are you going to structure your center within the church? The first option is directly under the pastor. What's the problem with that? The pastor gets busy, he doesn't have time to do all the administrative stuff. Second option is under an associate pastor. It can be under a board. But what if the board doesn't know much about counseling? It can be an appendage. That means it's not really a ministry of the church, but the church uses it. You're a counseling center in another location, whatever that the church might refer to. It can be a contract to the church. You can rent the facilities of a church. Another way of setting it up is that if you will let me use these offices in the church, I'll pay you this much rent for these offices. But you always need a contract when operating in the church, or you might have a lot of confusion and things going on. What do? We use the associate pastor model in the church. We have a contract, we're self-sufficient, we have good boundaries, and it seems to work pretty good for us. Financial structure and safeguards. How much money can I anticipate making this year? How much will I have to spend? What services can I produce for what profit? What's the least profitable? What expenses could I cut? What extra income can I make? Can I diversify? See, there are all these questions, and they're all going to get tied up in this thing we're going to call a business plan here in a little bit. How can I link my cost to the profits? How can I protect myself from market fluctuations? Would you agree that in counseling, your counseling load sort of goes like this? So how can I do something with it? You can diversify into other areas and have not just one stream. You'll see that we have a number of different streams that are going on here in our counseling center. So we're fairly well diversified. We can minimize the fixed cost. Another key that really has worked well for us is that everything we do, we try to make a percentage of what is taken in. So if a counselor, they get paid by how much they actually collect and bring in. Our administrators actually get a percentage of the total amount that the counseling center brings in. The only fixed cost we really have now at this point is advertising and office costs and things like that. Everything else is based on how well we're doing because, see, we're on a shared ministry principle here. We look at it, we're all in the ministry and we're all sharing in the how well it goes or how well it doesn't go. Everybody sort of has a vested interest in everything that's going on in the counseling center because they're going to get paid based on how we're doing. What type of population are you going to work with? Do you like to work with kids? I know one particular counselor that only really wants to do play therapy. That's a different population. How about seniors? Another very needy population that most people don't really want to work with. What are the needs that I'm going to try to meet? I'm going to be the jack of all trades and just take everybody and try and deal with everybody? Areas of specialization. What are my talents? What are my needs? Limits of services. Are there populations you can't ethically serve? What are our limits here? We try to serve as many people as we can, but we don't do hypnotism, we don't do New Age, we don't do affirmative gay counseling, we don't do affirmative abortion therapies. There are certain things that morally we don't feel that we can really do, and because of that, we don't really advertise for those particular things. We'll help people to the degree that they can, but we won't cross any moral boundaries. People with those problems will be happy to help to the degree that we can help them. Counseling areas of specialty based on need. Everything we have here has come and happened because there was a need that we then went out and fulfilled. See, we do an additional drug, alcohol, domestic violence, support groups, parenting, training counselors, all of those kind of things came out of the need. Now, hopefully you've been writing stuff down and you got an idea of maybe where you are on these different decisions. You obviously don't have to do what we did. It's your building, and it's going to be your practice. But now what I want to do is give you a picture of a business plan of how you take all this stuff and put it together. And I'm not going to have time to read you all of our entire business plan, but I'm going to read you a number of the sections as we go through that so that you can look at that and sort of understand the different pieces. I'm going to highlight it for you. Okay? I'm going to start out with our cover sheet or executive summary because it sort of summarizes everything we're doing here. Word of Life Counseling Center is a functional part of Word of Life Ministries, a Christian corporate nonprofit 501c3 entity whose mission is having as many outreaches as possible to save as many souls as possible. Word of Life Counseling Center's mission is to help people find the abundant life through Christ. It functions within the church to minister to church members and help them apply the Word of God and other Christian counseling methods to overcome the struggles of life, improve their relationships, and grow in Christian ministry. It also functions in the community to lead clients to Christ, draw members into this and other churches, and bring psychological healing, improve relationships, and deliverance from drug and alcohol problems, domestic violence, and parenting issues. It attempts to minister to everyone in need at some level through support groups, lay counseling, degreed Christian counseling, and state licensed counselors. Its secondary mission is to train Christians to help a hurting world through Christ, which is accomplished through the Word of Life Counseling Training Institute. Now, what's this thing supposed to do? This first thing. The business plan should tell a compelling story about your business, explaining who, what, where, how, and why. The plan should be focused and clear. The plan should define specific business objectives and goals. Writing a business plan should force logic and discipline into the business. A good plan is a living document. It should be updated regularly. So then we have our mission statement. Word of Life Counseling Center's mission is to help people find the abundant life through Christ. In a world full of spiritually unfulfilled, underachieving, emotionally and psychologically hurting people in our church and society, it attempts to provide more effective Christian counseling and life coaching resources to meet these needs. What's the company vision? Do you see how you break everything down and you get it in words so another person can read this and know what you're doing? Because it is part of Word of Life's ministries, whose mission is to have as many outreaches to save as many people as possible, it endeavors to identify new areas of need, both in the church and our society, determine how to most effectively meet these needs, and provide additional services within the capabilities of the center. Here are our goals. Provide professionally competent Christian counseling and life coaching services to as many people as possible within the context of the church environment. Ensure that the counseling center is self-supporting, contributes to the church, and never becomes a burden on the church. Ensures that the center is directed as much as possible by the Holy Spirit. Ensure that the center is a blessing to those who work there as employees, contractors, students, and volunteers. Ensure that the center develops and provides effective training for its members and those of other churches in starting their own centers in order to contribute to the overall good of the kingdom of God. And finally, to provide a foundation for the continuation and growth of the center over time. Now, the next section talks about the business history. And I already gave you that in our first lecture, so I'm not going to really read that to you. Then it talks about the key principles of the company. And those are myself, Rose Matzik, Peter Machetta, Cheryl Ressler, and Loretta Getting. Then we have a definition of the market. What is the market that we're really in? Describe the business industry and outlook. Christian counseling is a subset of the much larger secular psychology, counseling, and life coaching industry in the United States. It differs from the overall market in that it primarily focuses on meeting the needs of the church and those open to Christianity, and it relies on the Bible for additional insight and methodology. It is a rapidly growing market because in the past many churches have been reluctant to embrace psychology and counseling for fear its secular roots might negatively influence the church. The American Association of Christian Counselors now has members exceeding 50,000 members. Define the critical needs of your perceived or existing market. The critical need in the Christian counseling industry is for more effective Bible-based counseling, training counselors in every church, for the development of Christian methods to deal with specific population for a biblical perspective, and for training of Christian Bible-based counselors worldwide. Identify your target market. Our market for counseling and life coaching is those looking for thoroughly Christian counseling to meet these needs both with or without health insurance or mental health coverage. Our target for drug, alcohol, domestic violence, and parenting is those primarily who have these needs or are court-ordered to obtain our services. Our target for counseling training is students that are reasonably mature Christians who feel called to the counseling ministry both in our church, our community, and throughout the world. A general profile of the targeted clients. Do you see how we really have to tie everything down? And that's what the business plan is doing for you. Our targeted clients are those who are Christians, attend a Christian church, are openly to Christianity, or who are willing to come to our center because they are court-ordered or due to the low cost of our services. They are generally adults with moderate psychological or family problems, but may also include children who their parents perceive are having problems. They are generally middle-class families with some financial resources. This profile sometimes includes clients from the lower classes and those with extreme needs due to ongoing addictions or other more severe mental disorders. Describe the share of the market you currently have or anticipate. Word of Life Counseling Center has a small portion of the Christian counseling market, which is more dominated by the centers of several large churches whose main clients are associated with those large churches. In the drug alcohol market, we are again a small portion of the market, which is dominated by several large secular centers that have contracts with the state. Our domestic violence program is one of 7 currently approved by the courts, but this area is currently being impacted with new legislation and requirements. Our training program has a small portion of the market, which is dominated by the larger regionally approved Christian and secular universities. All these have the ability for continued growth in these markets. Describe our products and services. Again, we've already listed these before, but we're a state licensed center. We're court approved in domestic violence. We're a state licensed drug and alcohol outpatient clinic. We have parenting classes. We provide licensed counseling, Christian counseling, lay counseling, and free support groups. And in our training, we provide certifications for pastors, lay counselors, life coaches, bachelor's and master's degrees here and over the internet. Explain your products and how your products and services are competitive. All Word of Life counseling products are Bible-based and meet both Christian and secular standards. The drug and alcohol program is evaluated by the state SRS and has passed with high scores every year. It maintains an overall recovery rate of around 90%, which is much higher than the competition. Our training website, freechristiancounselingtraining.com, is the #1 ranked website in Christian counseling. Organization and management. Word of Life Counseling Center is one of the unique ministries of Word of Life Ministries Corporation, which includes a non-denominational church with 3 locations, a K-12 traditional school, a daycare, a teen church, a counseling center, a counseling training institute, and a number of other outreaches. It is a corporation, 5013C nonprofit organization headed by a president, vice president, and treasurer, and a board of pastors and elders. Ministries are organized under pastors and directors, which are responsible for the functioning of each ministry. All report operationally to the senior pastor. Identify necessary licenses. The Associated Word of Life Counselors Addiction Treatment Program operates under a license from the State Department of SRS. The director of the Counseling Center is a state licensed clinical marriage and family therapist and clinical addictions counselor. A number of other counselors are state licensed addiction counselors. Then we would be giving a bio description of each one of these people, which I'm not going to take time to go into. Now we have marketing and sales strategy that we need to do. Identify and describe your market. The market area of Word of Life Counseling Center is Wichita, Kansas, and the surrounding area. Clients come as far away as Garden City, Kansas. Clients are normally people with life problems which are open to Christian approach to counseling, as well as those referred to us by the courts. Wichita has more than 300,000 residents. The market for the Word of Life Counseling Training Institute is the Wichita area for residence training, and the world via the online training programs and websites. Describe your channels of distribution. Clients are seen daily at the center within the Word of Life Church building. Classes are held on Saturdays at Word of Life Traditional School building. Internet sales are ongoing at all times. Business insurance. We cover the center and myself with liability insurance, and all of the contractors cover themselves and also cover us as other insured. Now we have financial management, and we're going to get into this in a little bit more depth, because in the financial management I want to give you an idea of what is possible and where we sort of are. I'm not going to give you exact figures, but I'm going to give you ranges of where we've been in the last 3 years. The first thing is we didn't start with a loan, so we're not going to go into a loan application. But if you were doing your own business plan and wanted a loan, that's where this would be placed. A capital equipment and supply list. You're going to need things like a desk, hutch chairs, a group room, tables, chairs, locking file cabinets, computers, computer software, website costs, modifications of the existing structure. We'll be talking about that later in the course. Now let's look at our balance sheet. Okay, what's it like? What are the possibilities? Realize we've been around here for quite a while now, so maybe you'd say, well, we're about the possibility of what a small or medium-sized church could probably do in the way of a counseling center. First, counseling fees. These are sort of averages over the last 3 years. Yearly, we take in between about $81,000 to $106,000 in counseling fees. Books on the internet. We sell between $10,000 and $12,000 a book per year. A Word of Life Institute income, about $3,000 to $5,000. Donations, about $7,000 to $10,000. Then those are the money coming in. And guess what that has to balance with? The money going out. So now let's look at the money going out. Office expenses, about $300 to $2,000 a year. Postage expenses, $200 to $300 a year. Book expenses, $10,000 to $20,000 a year. But of course that balances out with the other money we're taking in. A lot of that is internet. That we take in a lot of our money from our internet bookstore and so on. Advertising expenses, $2,000 to $8,000 a year. Salary and contractor pay, $66,000 to $85,000 a year in total. Instructor pay for classes, $1,000 to $2,000. Tithe to the church, $7,500 to $9,000 a year. To get a basic idea of the size of what we're doing here within this size of a church, and that probably says about the size that you can expect that you could do. Realize we have a number of people that are involved in that, but most people are operating part-time. Break-even analysis. How do we figure out how much money we have to take in to break even? Well, the way we operate, what you have to do is look at your fixed cost. At one point, we were not coming out even, and we had to cut back our advertising because our fixed cost was exceeding what we were taking in some particular months. So the idea is this. This is the way we operate. A counselor gets 70% of what they take in. Now, new counselors sometimes is a little bit less, but generally, let's say it averages out 70% of what they take in. 10% of what they take in is used for administrative salaries, and 10% is used for advertising and fixed costs, and 10% is used for tithe to the church. Okay, now if we take that and put that together, we can come up with a little formula here. We know that our advertising plus our office expenses plus our postage is going to be our fixed cost. Now, I'm not including books because we get paid for the books, and our goal on the books is they just break even. So we're assuming the books break even. So if I add that all up, I'm just going to use an example. One particular year, advertising was $5,145. The office was $1,269, and the postage was $333 for a total of $6,747. Because that's 10%. That means to break even that year in counseling fees, we had to bring in $67,470. So from that, you can know what you have to do to make that work. Obviously, how could we make that number lower? By not advertising as much and using free advertising and cutting down on our office expenses. But if you use that kind of model, can you see how you can figure out what you're going to need? And our model here is what? Growth. Basically, just get things started, and as God leads you, as there are needs, you add in things, you take on more clients, and so on and so forth till you get to this particular level. Profit or loss statement. We need things to break even because we're a nonprofit organization, which means what? We don't really stack up a whole bunch of money. If we have the money, it allows us to do more advertising, allows us to expand. But we want to set our goals fairly low so we don't miss our goals and get ourselves in trouble. 3-year summary. Overall, for the counseling center was between $106,000 and $133,000. But again, remember, we've been in existence for quite a few years at this particular point. Assumptions upon which the projection was based. That we're doing a 70, 10, and 10 split, and salaries for everybody is a percentage of the actual fees. But there's one last thing. What happens in the counseling center if we don't come out even? Guess what happens? My salary gets docked. Any losses I absorb. Because why? I'm making the decisions. If I made bad decisions, if I took on things, if I decided on more advertising and so on and so forth, then whose fault is it? Mine. So nobody else in the center gets docked. Do you see what I'm saying? So therefore it provides a security that way. But because I'm making primary decisions, although I talk to people and we do stuff together, the idea is I take responsibility for what's going on here. That's an overview of a business plan. Can you see why you need to tie all that stuff down? That, of course, is going to be one of your assignments. But now let's go on to what we're going to do today, because we need to tie a lot of this stuff together. We're going to continue writing that mission plan that we started with last week. Remember, we had you make your mission statement. Now, what I'm going to do is take you through there, and I'm going to pretend like we're starting our counseling center. And I'm going to sort of fill that formula in how it would apply to our counseling center, and then we're going to have you guys all do that as an exercise at the end of this lecture. Okay, client mission statement. Help people find the abundant life through Christ. What's the beginning point? A dream of having a church-based counseling center. That's where we started. Where's the ending point? An established, self-supporting, full-time counseling center in the church like we have now. Specific long-term goals, and I just wrote some out as I would see as when we were starting the center. First goal is a functioning support group ministry to draw people into the church and the center. A paid counseling program. Having a dedicated facility within the church. Having an office manager so I don't have to do all the work. Have a full-time ministry that can support myself and my family. Add additional support group leaders and counselors as necessary. So those would be my long-term goals of what I'm trying to achieve. What do I need to ask myself about these goals? Are they God's goals or are they my goals? Do I really believe the Holy Spirit is telling me this is what I'm supposed to be doing? Because we need to take that into account every step along the way. How about my fears? Am I putting goals here that I just don't think are ever going to happen? If not, you got to get a hold of God and you break them down into smaller goals until it's something that you can really feel that with God's help you can accomplish. Alternate methods to achieve long-term goals. What are the different ways that I can reach these long-term goals? Well, the first one is a counseling center in the church. Another one could be starting to work and volunteer at another center. Another could be finding another church which wants a center, if your church doesn't. Another would be get ordained and licensed, begin as an office in the community and not even be associated with the church. Or contract with a number of small churches to be their counselor, and you go one day at this church, one day at that church, one day at that church. There were some counselors in town that were doing that for a while. So there are different options of how you can do this. The plan. Define the steps necessary to achieve a goal by this alternative in the order. So I'm using the first alternative here, which I think is the most viable one, which is the counseling center in the church. Okay, so what are my steps? Complete my counseling training in practicum, so I know what I'm doing. Probably do some lay counseling. Make the decisions about what, how, and when I'm going to do this. Write my business plan and convince myself and my pastor to do it. Get an approved contract with the church. Start my first support group. Begin free counseling. Transition to paid counseling. Get others to join me so that we can grow. Eventually transition to a full-time counseling and support ministry. Do you see how those are just the logical things that I'm putting down here of the way I'm going to get to those long-term goals? What do I need to do? Write down each step. Ask myself, what are the resources needed? How will they be obtained? What obstacles need to be dealt with? What weaknesses or fears do I need to overcome? How will we know when the step is achieved? And then the final thing here is from life coaching, they call it specific, measurable, attainable, relevant, and time-specific short-term goals. So I need to tie all these things down enough and say, what am I really going to do? Because if I don't do that, is this ever going to happen? I'm going to procrastinate. I'm going to put stuff off. I'm going to not get around to this. And 3 years later, you're going to still have a nice dream and nothing's going to have happened. So you've got to make yourself accountable to start taking some of these steps to see them happen. First thing, I'll just give you some examples. I'll tie down my mission statement by the end of this week. I'll write my business plan by the end of the month. You're supposed to do it in this class anyway. I'll meet with my pastor to get approval by the end of the month. I'll get a contract written and assigned by May 1st. I'll get the first support group meeting by September 1st. I'll establish my office and begin counseling by October 1st. Do you see how I'm laying everything out? I'll have liability insurance and start charging for my counseling by January 1st. Now the question for that is, is that specific? Is that measurable? Is that attainable? Are we just blowing in the wind? Is it relevant? And is it time specific? So do you see how you would tie that all down? Finally, application. Evaluate your dream and your mission statement. Make sure it's from God. Make a plan that you have peace about. Write the initial mission plan and take the actions of your business model. Design, business plan, general referrals, expand, diversify, add value, set good values, make money, and build a practice you can sell. So this is a lot of information. I realize I've gone very fast, especially the reading and so on, rattling off as fast as I could to get that for you. But next week, we're going to go into more detail now in a lot of these different issues and really tie them down. What we want to do now at the end of this lecture is we're going to now take our form and continue filling out the different goals and so on like I just outlined to you. Let's pray. Lord, I ask you to help every person here to really hear from God, hear from you, Lord God, to put together a plan, to work on that, and to see you accomplish in their lives what you intend for them. In Jesus' name, amen.
Jesus is the answer for the world today. Above him there's no other, 'cause Jesus is the way. Jesus is